Welcome to Masters of Product Management, a show that gives you real-world techniques and cutting-edge strategies to learn, apply, and succeed in product management. Now, here's the master himself, Stephen Haines.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I want to talk about your career in product management. But before I start, I have to share with you some data. So, according to some research done by my firm, Sequent Learning Networks, most product managers have no idea what they need to do to get to the next level. What's even more astonishing to me is that most managers of product managers don't know what's needed to coach and develop the product managers so they can get promoted. Now, whether or not you're at one end or the other of these extremes, because you can sort of look at it as an extreme, like I have no idea, to I really understand. I would say that, again, according to the research, most people as product managers don't really know what they need to do to get promoted. So there are some stark realities that have to be uncovered, and I've done a lot of work in this area. So a couple of things I want to share with you. First, a product manager isn't a product manager. I know it sounds really odd, but what I mean is that the role of the product manager varies so significantly, it's sometimes impossible to put a stake in the ground and say, so what do I have to do next? And the other part is that leaders think differently about the role as well as the function of product management. So I want to set some context for you here. Now, the research done in my company, Sequent Learning Networks, we found out, and this is really just new information, that there are 12 areas that really might influence how product management may actually be organized. And I have to read my notes because there are 12 points and I don't want to miss them for you. The first one is company complexity. Next is product and portfolio diversity, size of company, geographic distribution, industry or sector that's being served, meaning the vertical in which you operate, how fast the market is moving. All right. It could be the speed or cadence of that market, or the maturity of the industry in which you find yourself. I mean, you can be in fast moving consumer goods. You could be in oil and gas. You can be in medical devices, things like that, that different industries have matured at different rates. And again, they move at different rates. And because of that, sometimes you have to look at maturity of products. Another dimension is what we look at as the extent or complexity of the value delivery chain, which means that a lot of companies may simply classify themselves as B2B, but sometimes it's a B2B to B or a B2B to C or a B2B to even something else, depending on the complexity of that delivery chain. And the reason that's so important is because who the customer is. That a customer may not be a customer company, but a customer may be a person way out in the marketplace. Sometimes we have to also look at the age of the business. Another area is the culture of the company, and the last one are the kind of technologies that those companies deploy. All right. Now, I don't have as much time as I would like to go through all the details, but I want you to use this as a context to think about a situation in which you may find yourself or where you may want to work, especially when it comes to your career. Now, the other thing to consider is what do leaders in the company think or feel about the function of product management, and how do they cast that role of the product manager? Because in a lot of companies, the leaders don't always agree on what the product managers should bring to the table or even what the function ought to be. Okay. So from my vantage point and from the foundation of Sequent's business is this: product management is and should always focus on the business management of products, and product managers should be responsible for the full life cycle of a product, literally from beginning to end, as well as the P&L for the product and its contributions to the company. Now, you have to know that all PMs just can't show up and earn the credibility to do that. In my desk reference book, I have this picture of this sort of product manager, a superhero. And in fact, it really doesn't work like that. That you have some things that you need to be able to do.
Masters of Product Management is brought to you by Sequent Learning Networks. Sequent Learning provides real tools for success in product management, strategy, and marketing. Find out more at sequentlearning.com.
How do we level set? And one of the ways to level set is to think of other trades. So if you remember the tradecraft tradition, in the medieval times, and we had apprentices and journeymen and masters, we still sort of have that in the trades, like plumbing and electricians and masons and stuff. But to make it simple, let's transfer that to product management and use titles like associate product manager, and senior product manager. Now, some of you may actually be in those roles, but again, if you look at the responsibilities of people in those roles, you may actually find a lot of variation. Lately, in the last several years, I've noticed, for instance, that there are a lot of product directors, but they don't have any direct reports. They're just sort of title inflated into that, and it doesn't mean that their responsibility would be any different than that of an individual contributor product manager. And also from my standpoint is you just can't take a PM job when you really haven't done some of the lower level tasks. Earlier in my career, actually my first product manager job when I was a sort of a regular product manager, I probably should have been an associate product manager, but I got a promotion and it put me into that job band. And so things like that actually happen. Another thing to think about is that if we are like the tradecraft tradition, then we're sort of like practitioners as well. And like a practitioner, you bring some knowledge and, you learn it from your school and books and stuff like that. But where it really counts for product managers is on the job experience, just the way it is for surgeons and lawyers and pilots and stuff like that. So with this context, let me transition now to a few of the items that I think are really important. The first, I'm gonna do a little ADD moment for a second. If you visit our website, sequentlearning.com, look for a diagram. It's called a product management framework. And in that framework, there are some broad categories of work. We call them discovery and innovation, new product planning, product introduction, and post-launch product management. Now, within those areas, there are things that people do. So, for instance, one of the broader areas has to do with developing market insights, segmenting markets, identifying customers, looking at industry trends, understanding what competitors are doing in the products that they sell. Now, it's easy to say the words, but it's not always as easy to do the work. So, for instance, if you believe you understand what customers need, but the only people who are telling you are the salespeople, you may not have the most correct information. So what does it mean to really garner customer insights? Well, you have to go out and see them. But if you're not going out and seeing them on a regular enough basis and not bringing that information back into the company, then merely checking a box of saying, I understand customer needs versus more deeply understanding what motivates customers and how to share that with teams and put that into the category of I'm going to help you understand the stories behind how customers do what they do, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to garner the ability to influence other people because they may not pay attention to you or they may not listen to you. Another area to think about is strategic planning. Every product needs some kind of a vision and strategy, and the person who should cultivate that is a product manager. And if we're not doing that work, or you say it's somebody else's responsibility, it's going to be difficult for you to establish the foundation of leadership because market information, market insights, and strategy help set direction. And if we are doing those kinds of things, it makes it easier for a product person to develop a business case or the associated forecasts or compose a product requirements document or even prepare a product launch plan. And all of these items are listed as things to do within that product management framework that I asked you to download. And the last part of this formula then is when I do all this stuff and I get the data and I put a strategy together and I put plans in place, how well are we doing against those plans? And we have to, as product people, be extraordinarily performance-oriented. And not only do we have to be performance-oriented, we need to involve other people cross-functionally because people don't necessarily want to follow you or tag along or hitch their wagon to you if they don't believe that you're the right person to set direction. And in fact, as many of you will know, that leaders of other departments believe very often that their function is much more important, and their agendas and their metrics that they're monitoring follow that agenda, and they're less likely to follow along with the product guys.
Looking for resources and best practices in product management? Just go to sequentlearning.com to gain access to real-world tools that can make a difference. Templates, toolkits, workshops, and more. It's all there at sequentlearning.com.
So those are the kinds of things that you can look at. Now that gives you some additional context. So now we talked about company type and industry type in which you operate. We talked a little bit about sort of the role in different levels and things that you can do to develop some of your skills, or at least the skill areas that you need to focus on. Another thing to think about then is if you have the context, then consider yourself a product. Now, if you're managing a product, you might have a product scorecard that identifies both financial and non-financial performance indicators and an ability to track and share what's going on and continuously improve. Well, a career strategy does the same kind of thing. If you can create a scorecard that identifies, for instance, maybe your past and present performance, how have you applied what you know from the education and experience on the job? Or what are the behaviors you need to demonstrate, and how do others perceive you? Or what evidence do you have, all right, in terms of things like your performance reviews or the evidence of your work and things like that? So once you sort of garner that information about you and the work that you've done, you have to get it together. And in strategic planning, we sometimes do a SWOT analysis, but you can do a similar kind of a thing. You could do a personal SWOT analysis, some kind of a way to synthesize all this stuff. And then you say, okay, if I understand where my strengths are and where my weaknesses are, what are the opportunities that are in front of me? Notice I didn't say threats. All right. What are the opportunities that are in front of me? What are the experiences that I have to have? And if you refer back to the framework, you can sort of score yourself and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm stronger here because I have evidence and I really understand this and I've shown that I can do this work. And you may find other places where you need to fill in the gaps. So that's an important part of how to cultivate your own career. Right? Because ultimately, what you need to be able to do is communicate that with your boss, all right? And to be able to socialize that with other people along the way.
You're listening to Masters of Product Management with Stephen Haines from Sequent Learning Networks, sequentlearning.com.
So that's the rough context around companies, around you, around skill development and things like that. But how do you get promoted? So there are a few points I'd like you to take away with. Number one, work with your manager. Show that you're willing to take on new things. Express an interest in what's going on with the business. Do a lot of external exploration and really become a student of the company, a student of business, and conversationally adept at the business, at markets, at customers, and have those conversations. All right. Second, take a risk from time to time. Show that you're willing to be creative. Third, build political capital. All right. And what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes you need to manage up. Managing at the peer level and influencing for those people who don't work for you is one thing, but managing up and across the organization where you're seen as positive, where you're visible and you're providing visible results to the company, people take notice to that. And the bosses talk amongst themselves. As a matter of fact, it really matters what they say when you're not in the room. Okay. Next area. Have frequent interactions with customers, all right? Really, it's the basic stuff. Understand what they do, how they do it, what they value. And then when you find that stuff out, bring it back. Share it with people that you work with, okay? Another area, and I talked about this as skill development. a vision and a strategy for the product, because if you want to lead, you have to set direction. And if you want to engender followership, all right, which is really that's what leadership is about, you need to be able to give people confidence that you're the person who's bringing in data, you're involving them, you're sharing them, you're collaborating with them, and they will want to work with you and play with you on the team. And for another point, which is really critical, this is sort of the loop back, keep really good records. Monitor your own performance. Use that scorecard, for instance, to continuously add to the things you're doing. I kind of think of it this way. You've got like this portfolio of stuff that you do. Now, if you think about an artist, right, they're always carrying around those big cases, or they have websites where they showcase all of their stuff. Well, having your own portfolio of the work you've done, the strategies you've created, the business cases you've done, the launches you've participated in, papers you've written, things like that are critical, because bosses will come and go. You'll work in different places, but your resume only speaks to a certain extent. But your portfolio and the evidence of your work really speaks strongly to the who you are and what you do. And lastly, and this is a really important point that I want to wind up with, nothing succeeds like success. So thanks for joining me today. See you next time.
This has been Masters of Product Management with Stephen Haines, but it doesn't end there. Just visit sequentlearning.com to take advantage of free tools and resources and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. It's all there at sequentlearning.com. We'll talk to you next time on Masters of Product Management. Learn, apply, and succeed. Sequentlearning.com.